If managing a city's cash and investments is your responsibility, this video is to answer the first question you need to ask yourself. If you happen to be new to a city that has never had an investment portfolio, or if your city's entire cash reserves are in the state government investment pool, this video is to get you started on your pre-investing analysis. If you're perpetuating processes that were in place before you came into your job, then this video is to help you make your own decisions with some basic tools and understanding. This video is a three-step plan to decide how much you can and should invest, show you how to evaluate your safety and liquidity before considering yield, and I want you to be able to explain what risks you've mitigated so that you can proceed to achieve investment revenue with greater peace of mind. Let's start with a fundamental truth. Yield or return on your investment comes from taking risk. We know this from our personal lives, looking at the stock market and at personal banking. The safer, more stable investments generally earn slow and steady returns. The safest investments, a fixed-rate savings account, gives you certainty but a low return. CDs usually offer higher rates if you lock your money up for longer, and those offer certainty also. Risky investments are the ones we all know have the potential for higher yields, but they also offer the potential for losing everything. That leads to the next basic principle. This one is built into every state's statutes. That principle can never be put at risk. That's why we don't buy stocks or cryptocurrency. We can't. It's a shame that there were bad actors in the past that did in fact invest in instruments that lost principal. Taxpayers had expectations that their taxes would go to provide services, and when invested, would grow to provide even more. So today, on the books of probably every state, there's language that says we municipal stewards must not lose principal. We reduce it to 3 words: safety, liquidity, and yield, in that order. Every Treasury conference teaches you to prioritize safety first. Okay, got that. However, if yield is the reward for managing risk, I want to talk about how to manage liquidity risk and reinvestment risk so that you can achieve improved yields. Using the basics, I'd like to help you be a hero to the people you serve. There's never enough funding in a city budget, but this is one way you can help without raising taxes. You can make your city a better place, which is what we all want to do. Since none of us should ever invest in anything without knowing why we're doing it, let's talk about this. Try out this inspirational thought I found in the book The Blind Side by Michael Lewis, or maybe you saw the movie. Now, I'm the last guy who should be using sports analogies, but the idea is that the frontline position that guards the quarterback's blind spot has the greatest value, and it's reflected in his salary. The other positions on the front line are important, but the guy that has the knowledge, experience, and ability to confront the greatest threat has a salary that reflects the fact that he handles what others either fear or are unable to. This applies to you as a treasurer. Some of your value comes from what others either fear or don't know how to do. After watching this video, I hope you are going to have some knowledge that perhaps you either didn't know about or you didn't know how to use. The first thing I do the very first week at a new city, I assemble the last 5 years' bank statements, portfolio reports, and local government investment pool statements. Then I create a trend graph. I'm looking to see the annual seasonal ins and outs. You know what they are. Sales tax peaks in December, probably received 2 months later. Property tax revenue comes in predictably, maybe semi-annually. Your debt payments are also probably semi-annual. That's just the start. You have to know your city. What you can't know without talking to people is the trend and forecast of capital project or other specific spending. You know the funds that have built up for a purpose, and you need to know what and when. Still, just by taking these monthly cash snapshots, you'll begin to get a picture that might look like this. This started out as a 5-year graph. Looking back, each bar representing 1 month. The green bars are the checking account balance, the gold bars are the state investment pool balance. The vertical red line is when I was hired as the finance director at this city. I took 5 years right off the end of month statements for checking in the state pool. There were no investments at the time, and as you can see, the city had a huge balance in checking. This was a city with a $12 million annual budget, and it had $11.5 million in the checking account. So the orange bars are the investment portfolio that I started after first getting my bearings. The numbers aren't as important as the concept. You can see when the property tax comes in, and you can see the low points, and that's the key. I started making investment purchases, buying 3 or 4 year non-callable treasuries, agencies, and negotiable CDs. I didn't buy all in 1 month because I didn't want to be subject to the immediately available rates. I did the same thing at another city. Here I only had 3 years immediately available, but it revealed a very stable annual cash cycle. Property tax in more than covered debt service out. Investments had long since matured. I want to make a fundamental correlation to safety, liquidity, and yield. By keeping a healthy balance in checking, $10 million in this example, sufficient to cover AP and payroll, plus a little contingency buffer, I called checking my safety, as you can see in the legend at the bottom of the graph. I will point out 2 large cash receipts of ARPA grant proceeds, which would take a few years to spend down. So I subtracted those from the minimum I decided to keep in the state pool. That means the green bars at the very right contain money I know is going to be spent in the next year or so and should not be locked into 4-year investments. That should be in the state pool for when it's needed. Looking at the lowest cash balances historically and adding a comfortable margin, I committed to laddering out $50 million permanently for yield, but only after assuring my permanent safety in checking and my minimum permanent threshold in the state pool for liquidity. The main point here is that your state pool is your variable. That's what will ebb and flow, go up and down, and you have to know you'll have a healthy buffer there. If you get nothing else from this video, learn that you have to decide how much you can invest. No external manager can tell you. It's your job to decide this. You have to know your city. Investments are for pursuing spendable, budgetable yield. I knew I wanted to build a laddered portfolio with 4-year maturities. Liquidity was imperative. It's always imperative. Reiterate this, give it its own slide and put it on the screen. Your safety comes from keeping enough cash in your checking account so that you never bounce a check. That's accounts payable and payroll, debt service, wires, everything. You don't want to see how close you can walk next to the edge of the cliff. Go ahead, keep a little extra. If your cash management is so good that you're managing days and payables and checks clearing daily, you don't need this video for that. But for the rest of us, set an amount you always have extra in checking. You might say, but it's not earning interest. But I suggest we're going to earn enough interest revenue that it will make it worth your peace of mind. It's also important to remember your liquidity in the state pool. In the 3 states I've worked in, I could transfer from the local government state pool to checking next day, same day if I called early. So you might be tempted to think of LGIP as safety for that reason, but I want to challenge that thinking. Sure, we all move money in and out because we know it's silly to keep too much in checking where it earns nothing, but it's precisely because of easy access that the balance LGIP gives us is liquidity. Let's talk about your invested yield and your liquidity in the state pool. What money is that actually? I argue that what's in the state pool is the gap filling balance, the difference between your safety in checking and your yield in your investment portfolio. You're probably investing your mandatory reserves, your internal service fund carrying balances, and to some degree, capital funds that are earmarked for the future. Make sure you know what money it is that you think you can lock up for a while and why. I can't stress enough that you have to think of your seasonal fluctuations with a mind to what your minimum dips are. Just because you have a current year budget that says all department spending is what's budgeted, you have to be prepared for budget amendments that call for big spending. Your long-term capital planning has to be strong for you to have confidence in the forecasted balances in your capital funds. Let's talk about diversification. 2 types. Why is that? Well, you want to diversify your maturities for reinvestment risk. That's the risk that when any one investment matures, it's subject to the prevailing rates of the future in the month it matures, and there's no way to predict years out. Most people only think of diversification by issuer, and that has to do with credit risk, the chance that an issuer of one of your investments defaults. For the most part, in municipal, we're purchasing AAA rated agencies and treasuries when we start out. Corporate medium-term notes and commercial paper can be a subject for another video, but if you know them well, they fit a laddered strategy too. The point of this video is to show how reinvestment risk can be mitigated by spreading your investments over multiple dates in the future. By subjecting only small pieces of your entire portfolio to reinvestment risk in any one month in the future, you've removed volatility. Once you've got your ladder built, once you've purchased an investment so that one matures every month, All you have left to do is purchase the next one farther out to replace the one that just matured. You're also not ever going to care about the market value of a non-callable bond because you know you're going to hold it to maturity, at which point you get face value. All the fluctuations in market value as you held it were meaningless. Sure, on the annual report, you had to report your holdings at market value, but that was unrealized gain or loss. If you're buying non-callables or bullets, you can explain unrealized gain or loss as a required disclosure that your city is at no risk of realizing if you've covered your safety and liquidity sufficiently. You're going to discover that you have trouble deciding which day of the month to invest because rates fluctuate daily. You start waiting and hoping they go up just a tad. That's called trying to time the market. My advice is to just become methodical. Develop a reasonable rationale and stick to it. Hold your nose if you don't like the rates that day and purchase the Treasury or agency bullet that gives you the best yield on the day you're purchasing. Every time you make a purchase, you get the highest yield that day, and your conscience is clear, knowing you served your agency well that day, and you move on to next month. If you've inherited a portfolio, you may need to reevaluate the positions. In this example, I came into a city that had $5 and $7 million maturities in some months and many months when nothing matured. Consider reinvestment risk. These were pretty large bets that the month that $5 or $7 million investment matured, the rates would be favorable. We don't know the future, certainly the future of a particular month several years out. That's why laddering maturities smooths the reinvestment risk, and it makes your yield more predictable so that when you prepare a budget, most of your yield is locked in across a few years. Diversification isn't just about spreading your investments across different issuers, it's about spreading across maturity dates. When you're investing in everything that is essentially rated AAA, diversification by issuer isn't particularly all that important, but it does create interesting pie charts. This is a yield curve. This is a normal yield curve. Okay, so we haven't seen a normal yield curve in a while. This graph explains very simply why you shouldn't put all your money in your state pool and how you're going to increase your yield. If you have a $50 million portfolio or you're investing in pieces across 50 months, that means every month when something matures, you're purchasing on the yield curve at whatever the rates are right about here. Contrast that with where the investment managers of the local government investment pool are investing. If they have to maintain a very liquid portfolio, if they're only purchasing short-term investments, then the yield of everything is here. So if you're putting your money in the LGIP, just know the yields are likely to be around here in normal times. By purchasing farther up the yield curve over the long term, your yield will outperform a liquidity pool. Now, their yield will outperform you when rates rise because their whole portfolio turns over sooner, and the opposite is true when rates fall. That's just volatility. You may purchase a 4 or 5 year treasury earning less than your state pool, but you've locked it in for 4 or 5 years, whereas the state pool may drop. My point is that investing in a ladder for yield is much different than investing for liquidity. Take care of your own safety and liquidity, and you can achieve yield. Here's what I hope you got from this video. I showed you how to graph several years of cash activity so that you can determine your city's cash patterns. Your safety comes from having adequate checking balances. Justify keeping a margin of safety in your checking by having confidence your yield will more than pay for it. Your liquidity comes from having adequate flexibility in your state pool balance, and your trend history tells you what your worst case minimum was in the past. Give yourself a margin of safety in your liquidity too for the same reason. By investing higher on the yield curve, you lock in higher rates for longer than your state pool can. And by diversifying your maturity dates, you smooth out the volatility that may or may not happen. At the beginning, I said that if you're putting all your money in your state pool, you're doing it wrong. I hope I've shown you that you and your staff are in charge of knowing how much you can invest, and you are in charge of achieving yield that your state pool manager can't. If you happen to be using a portfolio manager, you are still the only one who must tell them how much they can invest. I hope this video has shown you that you and only you are responsible for knowing your city, but you also have tools that no one else at your city has. I used the blindside football analogy to illustrate that you are the one person at your city on the team that can create revenue that no one else can. Good stewardship isn't just avoiding loss of money, it's also putting taxpayer money to work responsibly. You bring value to your city because you manage the money well enough that you can create interest income. Nobody else is going to do it for you. You're going to need to build up your own credibility. Convince those around you who might be afraid that you know what you're doing, and you can train your staff. Start by showing you know your city's cash history. You know how to smooth out the volatility of cyclical financial markets, and you bring knowledge and discipline. Another good place to start is by updating your investment policy. That's the subject for another video, but when you explain the policy to your governing body, that's also your opportunity to share why the policy is important and being able to do exactly what you're going to do before you do it. I hope this video has been helpful to you. I'd appreciate your feedback in the comments to help guide my further attempts at creating useful videos. I would love to hear from someone in each of the 50 states. If your state statutes are the same, and if your state investment pool fits what I've described, we're all smarter together. I don't care if you subscribe or like or share this video. It's a free country, and I believe that when I figure out what content is worthwhile, it'll get liked and shared. I truly believe that as public servants, when the people we serve thrive, we thrive. That means our businesses and our community, our taxpayers and homeowners, and inside City Hall, it means every city employee. In finance, we succeed only when those we serve succeed. This video was about helping you help others succeed by bringing more funding to your city to make it a better place. Thanks for watching.